Hello, ladies and gentlemen, Mangs here, and today I wanted to do a little bit of a rant, or a bit of a review of the final boss fight in Fire Emblem Engage, Sombron. I just cleared my first Iron Man run on maddening difficulty, and I had a very, very good time. And this being the second time that I fight Sombron, I had a lot on my mind that I wanted to get out, so I figured I'd make a bit of a ranty video for you guys. In the background you can see slightly sped up footage from my fight against Sombron, so you can see how it went. Now, as I was playing through this fight, I realized that this is probably the first time in the series where we have come really close to having a really good final fight in Fire Emblem. Seriously, the Sombron fight comes so close to greatness, but due to a few faulty decisions and design flaws, it ends up not feeling very good to play. And I think that if they just had a little more testing and a little bit more time to develop this fight, we very well could have had one of the greatest boss fights of all time. Now, when you think about Fire Emblem and final bosses, one thing that, at least, I don't know about you guys, but to me, I don't really think that the final boss fights of most Fire Emblem games are very good. I have played every single game in the series. I've beaten every game in the series multiple times. And I have never been very impressed with the final boss battle. Usually, in most of the games, it involves the main character picking up the Secret MacGuffin and just one-shotting the Dark Dragon. And that is usually how Fire Emblem has done their bosses. There has been a few exceptions, though. In my opinion, one of the great boss fights of all time actually comes from Radiant Dawn against Ajera. This was a very ambitious boss fight, and one that I think they put a lot of effort into. I still think it had some problems, but at the very least, this felt like a true boss. You had to defeat the auras around the boss while she kept spawning in minions. She did all these AoE attacks that could silence or stun you. And then once you dealt with the auras, you could finally damage Ajera herself, which made the boss fight at least last for a little bit, unlike most Fire Emblem bosses that just kind of go down immediately. However, there is another boss fight that I personally think was the main inspiration for the Sombron fight, and in my opinion, actually one of the best boss fights we've ever seen in Fire Emblem, and that is Anonkos. Look at this map and tell me that this wasn't the inspiration for the Sombron fight. You're literally fighting a Dark Dragon in space. Now, the Anonkos fight is actually pretty damn good. I will give Revelation its due. They made a very good boss fight. You first had to defeat his hands before you could defeat his head. And then you had to defeat his head several times while minions kept spawning in around you. It's a good fight. It's a very good fight. Not perfect, but better than most Fire Emblem final bosses. And because I know a lot of people are going to bring it up, they're going to be like, oh, Mangs, don't you love the Takumi fight? Yeah, I do love the Takumi fight from Conquest, but I consider it almost a little cheating because Takumi himself isn't all that impressive. Once you get to him, you kill him really quickly. It's more of a gauntlet to get to him, which I think is fine, but it's not really what I think about when I think impressive final bosses. When I think impressive final bosses, I'm thinking of fighting one big monster, maybe with some adds, and then having that boss do a lot of cool things as you bring him or her down. Now, first things first, let's review the Sombron fight a little bit, shall we? Let's just actually talk about the fight. You can see it in the background here. So the Sombron fight has two phases, yeah? It starts off with this phase, as you're seeing right now, which is phase 1. And it's just Sombron with some generics next to him. I don't know if they're going for this kind of Dark Warlords vibe here or what they're doing, but basically you're fighting a bunch of generics with S-rank weapons, and to its credit, they're actually very nasty. I mean, I almost lost my Kagetsu right away. They actually do a tremendous amount of damage. But after you defeat this fight, everything resets. It is basically two isolated fights. It's like two maps really in one. As soon as you defeat Sombron in his first final phase, all your engage meters reset, so you can pretty much just spam your engage attacks to your heart's content, which doesn't feel that good in my opinion. I personally would have liked it if the two phases were linked, so that you at least would it at least would incentivize you to try and conserve your resources a little bit. I also think that Sombron himself is kinda lame, if I'm gonna be completely honest. He's kind of just a dude. He goes down very easily. He has like He has like a 1-2 range spell, but you can nuke him down really easily. He's not very hard to deal with at all. But to be fair, this is his human form, so I'm not overly upset. I just feel like they could have done more with this one face. You know, it feels kind of like an afterthought. But of course, once you deal with his first phase, he now transforms into the Fell Dragon. And I will give them credit where credit is due. Sombron, design-wise, looks very impressive. He takes up an absolutely massive amount of space on the map. I think, is that like 4x4 tiles? And stat-wise, he does look very imposing. He has yeah, I think that's like, what is that, 1, 2, and I think that's 5x5 actually. Making him one of the biggest bosses in Fire Emblem history, like size-wise at least. And he has 100 HP and 4 additional health bars. No, sorry, 3 additional health bars. He has 4 in total. So this means Sombron as a boss has 400 HP, which I think is almost the highest we've ever seen in the series. Now, the fight itself is actually pretty cool. You start out with Sombron in the middle here. He has this giant shield around him, so he can't really do much, and you have to defeat these Dark Emblems. And these Dark Emblems are actually really cool because they represent final bosses from all the Fire Emblem games. You start out with 4, then once you kill the 4, you get 4 more, and I would assume it goes all the way up to the 12 or whatever it is. And what I really, really like about this is that, in theory, this is amazing. But it just doesn't really work out. Of course, one of the biggest disappointments of this fight to me is that the Dark Emblems are just generic corrupted. They don't have unique models. Now, I get it. Look, I get it. I get it. Designing unique boss models for all the final bosses of Fire Emblem would have taken a tremendous amount of resources. I understand why they didn't do it, but I wish that they had. Can you imagine this boss fight if we saw Ashnard, Ashera, the Demon King? I guess we wouldn't. Actually, no, we would have seen Ashera. The Demon King, Rudolph, Nergal. Like, this would have been one of the coolest boss fights in Fire Emblem history if they had actually taken their time to animate the Dark Emblems. I understand why they didn't do it, but I wish that they had. Now, what's cool about this is, of course, you have to counter each of the emblems with their respective hero, right? Like, when you fight Rudolph, you need to use the Celica emblem. Rip-On, by the way. Would have been very cool to see him in the game, but I guess he got shafted. So, on paper, I think this is probably one of the coolest ideas for a Fire Emblem boss fight. The fact that you have to know who the final boss of each game is and use the corresponding emblems to deal with the final boss is really cool. Of course, the disappointing part about this is that you don't really need to do it. You can see right here, Gold Mary is attacking, she's attacking what I believe, yeah, she's attacking the Julius boss here. Or is it Arvis? I actually don't remember. I think it's either Julius or Arvis. And because she has the Sigurd emblem, she deals like 100 damage. She one-shots him, right? But the thing is, you don't really need to do this. You can use your other characters to deal with the Dark Emblems. They just deal less damage, but you can still kill them just fine. I personally would have liked it if they had been a bit more punishing on the player, but it is what it is, right? So, once you, of course, defeat one of the Dark Emblems, Sombron's shield goes down a little bit, and then once you defeat all 4 of them, his shield will go down, his shield will lower, and you'll have, the ability to really nuke him down. And I think that what they intended to do, at least on the surface, is I think they wanted you to actually go through 3 phases, because there's 4 emblems, and I think there's 12 in total, if I remember correctly. So they wanted you to go through 3 phases of the Sombron fight. But of course, the dirty secret here is that you don't really need to do this at all, because at this point, you have so much damage output that you can absolutely nuke Sombron down. It is not hard to do at all. You have so much damage output at this point. You have 2 Emblem Blasts, and you have so much effective weaponry that Sombron will absolutely deteriorate. Let's see if we can find the part of the... Yeah, so here you can see his shield breaks. I break it on enemy face. And you can see there's a lot of minions coming in here. It looks very, very scary. Looks very scary. And, I remember thinking to myself, like, can I really do this? You can see here I'm using the Veil to kind of stack poison on him and whatnot. But I soon discover that Sombron's 400 health points will not hold up for long. Because, of course, you have 2 Emblem Blasts, which are capable of taking out one of his health bar each. So that's 2 health bars just gone. And then you have the Byleth Ring, which lets you dance for 4 units. Of course, you can engage Blast again, but you have so much damage output. And to make this even more laughable, I was low manning this. I had very few units left at this point. Like, I was bringing Anna to the final fight because I had no units left. I don't remember exactly how much I was low manning it, but I think I was at least maybe 2 or 3 deployment slots behind. And despite that, and Iron Manning this, I was able to nuke Sombron down without any issues. So, how could this boss fight have been done better, right? How could this boss fight have been done better? In my opinion, as I said, it came very close to greatness. One of my biggest issues with Sombron as a final boss is how passive he is. He just stands there. Like, I think during my fight, he did like 1 area of effect breath attack on the platform, and then he does like his little engaged AoE attack, which like forces all of your units out of their emblem state. But aside from that, he kind of just sits around because he has like 2 or 3 range, but for most of the fight, you just stay out of his range. So he ends up doing absolutely nothing. Of course, he fights back when you attack him, and he does like a decent amount of damage. It's a little inaccurate, I think. But Sombron himself feels extremely passive as a final boss. He doesn't do anything. At least when you fought Ashera in Radiant Dawn, she would do something every turn, whether it be summoning minions, smiting you, doing area of effect attacks. Here you can see Kagetsu and Myalir doing an Emblem Blast, and look at the amount of damage they're dealing to this guy. Like, they're taking out one of his health bars like that, right? So, I think that one of the biggest problems of the Sombron fight is, 1, he's way too passive. So, in my opinion, they should have made him do the Dragon Breath every turn. Seriously, every turn he should have covered a part of the platform in Miasma. That would have actually forced you to move around and actually dodge his breaths. But he does it like maybe once every 4 turns or something, which is nothing. And he's not even doing like AoE attacks that does damage. Personally, I think that Sombron should have used his tail and destroyed parts of the platform. So the longer the fight goes, there's like more and more holes in the platform. It's harder to move around. Like, look at how massive this dragon is. He is huge. He towers over other final bosses in the series. I feel like he should have had such a bigger impact on the fight itself. Instead, he kind of just stands there and spectates his own fight, which is so sad. It is just so sad. So, I think that the Sombron fight could have been fixed really, really, really easily. There's a couple things that they could have done to really fix this fight. So, the first thing, I personally think that they should have made it so that maybe all the Dark Emblems are on the map to begin with, and that you actually had to use the Emblem Rings against the Dark Emblems. Maybe you'd be able to nuke them down, but it should take a hell of a lot more effort than it actually did. So that's the first thing. I also think it's a big cop-out move that you can look at their description and see which game they're from. I never liked that. I kind of like the idea that it kind of rewards people who know. It's a bit unfair, maybe, but I mean, it's not like people can't look it up. Like, we have the internet, right? But personally, I think that one of the biggest flaws of the Sombron fight is just the amount of HP he has. Now, there are 2 ways you could fix this, right? You could either just give him more HP bars, give him like 10. He should have at least had 5, in my opinion. There is another very easy fix to the Sombron fight, though, and that is simply to have him bring up a shield once you take down one of his health bars. It's a bit of a cop-out move, I agree. But if you actually want to see all 3 phases of this fight, you could have just done it so once he loses an HP bar, boom, his shield comes up again. And you have to repeat the process of dealing with the emblems. I also think that they bring in way too little reinforcements on this map. I can appreciate the final map not being a reinforcement spam fest, especially considering the nightmare that is Chapter 25. But I personally think they could have gone a lot harder on the reinforcements in the final battle. They don't really feel oppressive at all. Like, I never felt stressed doing this fight. I never once felt pressure doing this fight. Like, I was feeling like I could just take my time moving around the platform. So, yeah, looking at this fight, I feel like it could have been so much more than it actually ended up being. It's been described as a victory lap, which I really don't think that the final boss of any Fire Emblem game should be a victory lap. I think it should be a big, epic confrontation. And with Sombron, they came so close. They came so close. And yet, a couple of bad decisions really screwed the fight over, in my opinion. And it's just very sad to see. So yeah, I just wanted to make this video talking about the fight because game design is a big passion of mine, and personally I've thought a lot about how to make interesting Fire Emblem boss fights. In my own Fire Emblem ROM hack Rebellion Saga, there is a particular boss fight coming up that I'm very excited to see people try out. I thought a lot about it, and I think you guys are gonna like it. And but it's tough. It's tough to make a good Fire Emblem boss because when you have like 12 to 15 playable units, the power disparity between your final team is going to be so variable, and it's just going to be very, very hard to know exactly what the player is capable of doing. And it's kind of hard to gauge their damage output. Really hard to gauge their damage output, right? Because you just don't know how efficient the player is going to be using their resources and whatnot. But I'm hoping that one of these days soon, we will see a Fire Emblem game come out and we'll actually get a great boss fight that doesn't just feel like a victory lap. Anyway guys, I'd like to hear your opinion on this. Did you like the Sombron fight? Do you agree with my criticisms of it? How would you personally make it better? Do you agree with some of the ideas I had? Making Sombron more active, making him like breathe every turn, making him do like more area of effect attacks? Or would you go about fixing the fight in a different manner? My name is Mangs. Thank you so much for listening to another one of my Fire Emblem TED Talks. I'll see you guys soon. Bye-bye.